round two. Okay, we see some connections into a split squat. So this kind of elbow pummel here, I'm not in love with, right? Like yes, I understand what the passer is trying to do is make a connection to the hips to control and to spin the guy, right? But you see Levi's reaction is to high pummel over to the shoulder. I don't think that's very effective. You end up with this kind of position where I think the leg is actually really weak. It feels very bad. Um, it feels like it's all flexibility. You can actually arguably have some LCL kind of strain if the guy's like absolutely blasting through and shoving this foot to your face. I don't think this is a strong frame. What are some other options you can do? You could retain guard on the left side, get your left foot as a K guard hook on the bicep of the right arm of the passer, and try to open up and re-square up, right? That is one position you can do. This arm, you could also, I don't know, it seems like Hulk is kind of flaring. It might be difficult to do this, but I think it's totally possible for people who are flaring their elbow, trying to keep the high pummel away, is that they're opening the space, we'll see, here, right? You could, instead of having this foot here, retract this around on the outside and have your knee come in on the inside, right? Effectively putting you into a knee shield position here. I don't know if that's something that like maybe Levi doesn't feel safe. Maybe Hulk is really good at passing that kind of a position. But I think over the top kind of lasso is not that strong. It's a lot of strain on the hips. Your hips will gas. I just don't think it's structurally the best option. I definitely am guilty of doing it if I feel like I'm getting passed, but it's probably bad practice. I think it's probably easier, right? The guy flares the elbow, then this space here is open. That allows your knee to come in and pummel in. If the guy shuts off his elbow, then yeah, maybe over the top might make more sense. But I think in this specific position, maybe it's a camera angle. I would opt to use my knee to come on the inside between the elbow and the hip, right? And the guy, the guy's just driving in hard. It's tough to sometimes remove that frame, even if it's a shitty frame, to remove that frame to pummel a more optimal way because the guy might just melt through, right? That is something to consider. And like, yeah, okay, Hulk is starting to kill this K guard hook, opting into reverse de la Hiva, but like there's just so much space here. Like Levi has the option to get that over. But I think actually we see him enter Kiss of the Dragon at some point during this round. Right? Like that's so wide open. And I don't know, I feel like something that you should also be mindful of is getting rolled onto this hip. So I think Levi's doing a pretty good job. What I might do is I might pin myself on my left hip more instead of being supine at this position. Yeah, like this is probably structurally better, right? If you're flat back here, I actually think it's kind of bad. But if you're on your side, I think your spine is more in structure. You're able to face the guy. You have better frames, right? Think about if Levi's right shoulder was touching the mat, that would actually require more dexterity out of his right hip for this frame. So I think it actually alleviates some of the flexibility to demands if you're lying and playing a side guard. It depends on the angle. It depends on the angle. Usually I am flat back supine, right? And it looks like here Hulk. I mean the ref's in the way, but it looks like Hulk is pulling on his head. And yeah, this is the dilemma, right? I think what's happening here is Hulk is anchoring himself to Levi. He's using his hands to hold his head, and he's pulling himself deeper into the pass, right? In the gi, very common thing, right? You grab a collar and you just melt through. The extra lat pull power is really difficult to deal with. But I think in this specific example, Levi's able to create frames, right? He has both his arms and this weirdo leg inside. He has a reverse de la Hiva hook on the leg, right, to prevent the knee slice. And we see a moment here where Hulk is actually going to shift his weight to his right side. And by doing so, Levi feels that this leg is light, which allows him to invert underneath, right? I think a lot of people make the mistake of trying to invert underneath just because there's space, right? Oh, there's space here. I could just shove my head in. You might still get smashed, right? Because the weight is in this leg. It's hard to see now because the ref's going to come in the way. But when the moment when he actually shifts his weight over, right? Levi grabs his leg. I bet you Hulk probably feels like, oh shit, he has all my weight, right? Like, I think it's a very common reaction that as people start passing and they feel this hook come in, that they're like, oh, this guy's starting to control my weight. I don't feel safe to defend. I'm going to shift my weight back to the other side, right? And he's okay. He opts to drop to this hip and to try to strip this, which is which is, I don't know why he feels like maybe he's not getting anywhere. Maybe he wants to like switch side to side. But this is the correct response from Levi, I think, right? The leg is light. You now have the ability to go underneath. And he does it so fast, right? Like he's in on a reverse De La Hiva Kiss of the Dragon. You know, does he get anything out of this? I don't remember. I think they actually just reset. But that's the proper time, I think, to attack the legs, or sorry, to do threaten an inside bolo. Right, sinking again heavy, overweight again, trying to make head and arm connections. That's gonna be really difficult. Levi has 4 frames right now, right? If you really wanted to, he could chest press Hulk with both his arms. I see that there's this hook here. I think he's hunting for an arm saddle again, for a Choi bar on the far side. But this knee frame and this K hook are so strong to stop Hulk from just smashing through. Like I don't think you're gonna be able to hug your way through Levi's legs. It's just so difficult to deal with skeletal structure. Right? Again, right? So he hits an off balance. His weight shifts back into his butt, and that's what lets Levi invert underneath. Man, Levi plays this lasso a lot. Okay, that's something different. I think it's difficult to see, but I think Levi gets the actual grip. And Holga is trying to just bury his head in, which is like, I think that's a very basic thing that people teach, right? Like, oh, to pass, you just shove your head into their hips and control it. And everyone's like, cool, I'll do that. Completely ignoring what do you do with like legs and frames. You can't just shove your head in there. You're gonna shove yourself into a triangle. And this is very gi based, right? Flat back, double sleeve kind of control, double lasso. I'm sure they both have definitely trained gi. So I think these positions are pretty familiar. It's not like Hulk is just like completely lost in this specific situation. I think he knows what he's doing. I think it's just really difficult to deal with. When you have someone like Levi who has 4 limbs, 4 frames, and you only have 2 to attack with because you have to physically stand on your legs, it's very difficult. Right? And that's an interesting reaction, right? Hulk does the usual thing where you pin the bottom hip, he pins this down, but he can't spin or do anything out of it because this frame is in play, right? This frame here, and arguably, his other arm would also help too, is preventing Hulk from circling this way around to his head. In the gi, yeah, you could punch here, you could grab the collar, and you have more space, right? You can actually play at a distance from the person and be outside of the range of their frames because you have the collar to help pull you back in. But in no gi, you can't really do that. You kind of have to either do like a collar tie or reverse collar tie, right? He's trying to address the leg frame. It's difficult. Knees are pinched together. His weight is all here, right? This is why Levi's able to go to for K because Hulk is not. I don't think his weight distribution's in a really stable place right now. Right now he has access to legs. Trying to go for a matrix hook. And then I don't know how I feel about spin outs. I personally don't because I feel like if the guy knows leg locks better than me, and I spin out, my legs are gonna explode. like I'd rather just tap or just slowly roll and see it. But in comp, people do that all the time. I do feel like there is some risk of injuring yourself if you roll in a way that like you don't expect them to be able to finish from. But yeah, people do it. And as a guard player, that's something you have to account for. You definitely have to really consider, like, what if this guy spazzes out? How do I have connection to this, right? Because, like, on one hand, I know I've said guard is just frames, and you should just almost always frame. Um, but you get into like a K guard when you have like control of their leg, I think you could start upgrading some of your frames for hooks, right? You can't just play frames because they'll just run around and you'll get tired. But I don't think it should just be hooks.